And we do have the necessary quorum to begin the meeting. So I'm going to call to order the Council of Mayors Executive Committee for March 26, 2024. And I'd like to begin the meeting. They provide me a script here that I'm supposed to read, but I'd like to just ad lib off the script for a moment. As most of you probably know, we lost a gentleman who was about a 20-year member of this group, and that was Al Larson, who was the mayor in Schaumburg. And several of us here attended his memorial celebration, I guess I would describe it, last week. And it was nicely attended, but Al was certainly one that had a good understanding of the region and specifically, you know, what needed to be done to kind of continue to grow the region. And I remember he was always kind of known for the one that was willing to make the motions to do bigger projects. And so he was definitely a leader in the region and one that we will certainly miss. He had retired as Mayor of Schaumburg a while back. 2019, yeah. And so he was in kind of bad health and had been suffering for a while. So he was had a very nice opportunity, though, to talk with his family and whatever. So we just wanted to officially recognize Al Larson for his many years of service to the CMAP board here and knowing how much he really liked being around. So he was a great part of it. So turning to the script, good morning. It is now the stated time of 9:30, and I'd like to call the executive March 26th meeting of the Council of Mayors to order. I want to welcome back everyone to the old post office for this meeting of the Council of Mayors Executive Committee. Before we get started, I would quickly like to review some logistics. For those in this room, the closest restrooms are straight out the back door to the left of the reception desk. If you're in a room and you haven't already, please be sure to complete the sign-in sheet in the back hallway. Members of the audience that want to make a public comment later on the agenda should fill out the public comment card and hand that card to Terry Dixon or a CMAP staff member in the room. This meeting is being broadcast on Zoom and is being recorded. Jared can confirm that the recording has begun, and I see on the screen here that we have folks joining us, so we are knowing that it is in progress. In order for those online to hear what is being said in the room, it is critical that we all use the microphones. The buttons on the microphone are set on and off. It is best if you also use the best practice to continue identify yourself when making a motion, a second, a comment, or a question. And to activate the microphone, you got to push the button down here at the bottom, and when it goes green, that means you're live and on the air. Those participating in Zoom, please keep your microphones muted unless you are being called upon to speak. When appropriate in the agenda, I will request comments from the online, and we can also indicate your desire to speak via the chat box or using the raise hand function. Staff's monitoring Zoom and will recognize it when it's your turn to speak. I would like to welcome new representatives from the South Suburban Mayors and Managers. President Ronald Gardner from Glenwood is. Want to raise your hand so we all know who you are. With that, I would like to start the self-introductions of the members here at the table. I am Mayor Jeff Schielke. I'm from the mayor of the city of Batavia, and I have been the mayor for the last 43 years. To my right is
Mayor Leon Rockingham, City of North Chicago.
Mayor Ron Gardner from the Village of Glenwood. Gary Grasso, Village of Burbridge, representing DuPage County.
Tom Hayes, Arlington Heights Village President and Northwest Council.
George Van Dusen, Mayor of Skokie, North Shore Council.
Mary Warner, Village of Worth, Southwest Council.
Dave Brady, Village President, Bedford Park, Southwest Council.
Greg Lundquist, Village President, Northfield, North Shore Council.
Terry Dixon, CMAP.
well, thank you and welcome to everyone. The next piece of business is we need the approval of the minutes. Mayor Sherwin is joining us by Zoom and has requested to participate remotely as permitted by the OMA. A vote of the president, of those present is required for this participation. May I have a motion and second for Mayor Sherwin to attend?
move. Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hello, everybody.
Oh, Jeff, how you doing?
Okay.
Good. All right, we will now move on to the approval of the minutes. We have before us a draft of minutes of the November 7th, 2023 Council of Mayors Executive Committee. Are there any additions or corrections?
Second.
Motion and second for the approval of the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, okay. Here, let's see. There's nobody opposed, all right. I'm reading off this script here, so I gotta make sure I'm following what I'm supposed to be doing. We will now,
First meeting.
yeah, my first meeting. We will now move on to the CMAP announcements portion of today's agenda. And the first one is Amy Lee.
Good morning, mayors. Thank you for being here today. My name is Amy Lee. I'm Deputy of Transportation, Research Analysis and Programming here at CMAP. I'll just be filling in today for Executive Director Alaman. A few updates for you all. First is the 2024 Technical Assistance Call for Projects. The CMAP Technical Assistance and RTA Community Planning Program. The call for projects closed on Friday. As you may know, this program supports communities by offering planning and implementation assistance, providing interagency experience and leveraging the region's transit network, and building local government capacity. This year, we received a combined 122 applications from 96 applicants. This is a huge response, given that our past annual average has been more like 50 to 60 applications. The top 3 CMAP categories included applications for ADA self-evaluation and transition plans, bike and ped plans, and quarter plans. CMAP and RTA staff will be busy reviewing these applications, talking with the applicants, and scoring them. We hope to announce the final list of awarded projects in June. Next update is related to ADA training updates. As I just mentioned, we saw a lot of applications for technical assistance around ADA planning. So I'd like to share a friendly reminder that registration is open for CMAP spring accessibility trainings, which will cover things like the Americans with Disability Act itself, just to understand how that federal guidance relates to things at the local level. ADA self-evaluations and transition plans, training on that, as well as the Illinois Accessibility Code. Trainings will take place April 15th through 16th, as well as May 1st through the 2nd. At this point, CMAP does not plan to offer future trainings on these topics, so we encourage your communities to really seize this opportunity. These trainings are designed for municipal staff, public works staff, ADA coordinators, elected and appointed officials, community leaders, and really anyone interested in learning more about how to make their communities more accessible. The next update is related to the Illinois EPA EV charger funding opportunities. Illinois EPA has opened up round 2 of their notice of funding availability for CEJA EV chargers. As much as $44 million will be available within the state. Applications will be accepted through May 10th. In addition to funding private applicants and level 3 DC chargers, this round actually expands it to include local public agencies and level 2 charging points. So additional points will be awarded to projects in equity investment eligible communities and to projects at public transportation park and ride facilities. Relatedly, we wanted to give you an update on regional climate planning activities. We are celebrating the release of the Priority Action Priority Climate Action Plan for the Chicago Metropolitan Statistical Area. The plan supports equitable investments in policies, practices, and technologies that reduce emissions, create high-quality jobs, spur economic growth, and increase quality of life. The Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, MMC, completed the Priority Climate Action Plan just recently. CMAP collaborated with them on this, providing a lot of analytical support and conducting a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. As part of this process, CMAP's greenhouse gas inventory found that more than half of all emissions came from industry and transportation in 2020. This is likely because of the region's longstanding role as a national manufacturing and transportation hub. Other large emissions sources were the commercial and residential building sectors, likely because of our region's northern climate, requiring both heating and air conditioning, and older building stock. The Priority Climate Action Plan is the first major deliverable through the US EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grants Program. CMAP will lead creating the next piece, which is a comprehensive climate action plan for the Chicago MSA. This is due in June of 2025, and it will provide an overview of the region's significant greenhouse gas sources, sinks, and sectors. The plan will establish near-term and long-term emission reduction goals and provide strategies and measures that address the highest priority sectors to meet these goals. So that concludes some of our updates. As usual, we'll send you a follow-up memo with more details on the things that I brought up so that you can take them back to your respective councils. Any questions?
Any questions of Amy?
Just real quick, ADA, you said that was May 17th?
The training. Yeah, the trainings take place April 15th through 16th, and then there's another one May 1st through 2nd.
Get information out to us.
Yes. Mhm.
Anybody else? Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving to 4.1, that's IDOT Bureau of Local Roads, Chad Riddle.
Morning, strangers.
Morning.
Morning, haven't seen you in a long time.
I just want to let you know I'm still around and see some old faces and some faces I don't recognize. And pardon mine, I'm unscripted, so I'm going to wing it here. But I did do a summary like I used to do for the most recent lettings. It's been since November since you met. Now you're not going to meet again now, I guess, until August. So just looking at local roads and especially the program and our letting, we got some big projects coming up, hopefully. I mean, keeping our fingers crossed. Some have right of ways going on, but when you look at our upcoming lettings, which, you know, our staff is working diligently with your staff and consultants, what we have on April right now is about $163 million worth of projects. A couple of big ones on there, and June could possibly be just as big if right of way clears. So we're working hard, and hopefully we're all coordinating and cooperating on that. Other than that, a couple of just quick comments. I know a lot of you have gotten some new monies, so if you've gotten new monies, we need to work diligently with not just the planning liaisons and CMAC for the tip, or CMAP for the tip. We need to make sure that these monies are usable on projects that you may want to use them on, and make sure that schedule. That's one thing I also want to emphasize is, this is weird doing this. Make sure your consultants as well as your staff are starting these projects off with reasonable schedules. We are getting a lot of projects that, you know, are coming in, and they talk about, I know you talk about some monies that's going to sunset and that kind of stuff, but there's still a process, there's still a submittal schedule, and we need to still abide by that. We're working our best to work with you, but you can't, you know, a reason that a project's going to possibly lose funding is not a way to try to get a project on a letting in 2 months when it usually takes 6 months to do it. You need to think ahead on that and make sure we will all work together on that. And other than that, the other one announcement, the PLs are aware of it. We are going to do our every other year training, which we haven't done in 5 years because of COVID. That's scheduled for May 20th and 21st, a Monday and Tuesday. It's not 2 days. It's going to be like a 3 to 4 hour session, both Monday morning and the same thing repeated Tuesday morning. We're working right now on the agenda and the PowerPoint presentations, and we're gonna be working with CMAP, APWA, and everybody and maybe our T squared. We're not sure exactly how the sign up's gonna happen. That'll probably happen mid-April. That'll be coordinated through the planning liaisons and your council of mayors to get staff out there to update how our forms are changing and our process is not really changing, but just sort of like a refresher for everybody that's been out of the loop for a while, and we got a lot of people that are new staff. Other than that, I just wanted to see everybody's face and come downtown and, any questions, comments for?
And where's the
IDOT?
sessions going to be held at?
Right now, they're gonna be in District One in Schaumburg.
Okay.
Lower level classroom, the classroom holds about 90. So we're hopefully gonna get a full class Monday morning, a full class Tuesday morning. We do have an option. We're not gonna put a sign out up there, but if those fill up, then we might do a Monday afternoon type of thing too. It's just a matter of how long the class might end up going, so. But again, it's mainly like agreements, focusing on the District One. We are gonna work a little with CMAP. It may not be the full blown. Last time we did one, I had FHWA there, central office there, CMAP there, as well as District One. So we're trying to cover the material, but we may not have physical bodies from everybody to give a full presentation. So it's more of an overview with some details, because if someone has not been exposed to this at all, they're not going to learn it in a 3 or 4 hour presentation. But the ones that are exposed to it, and it's more a reminder and just doing that, and any new ones will be exposed to it, and they can follow up with questions and details with staff. So.
And you're going to send us all a notice about this, or?
The notices will go out through, I'll let CMAP know when we officially figure out how it's gonna be a sign up. And that'll go out probably mid-April, give everybody about 5 weeks notice. But right now, if we wanna let your staff know or whatever, that 20th and 21st that morning, that day could be a possibility to do this training, so.
And this is open to members of our transportation staffs in each individual city.
Ideally, we're looking for, local agency staff that works with the planning liaisons to, process all the paperwork that has to go through both CMAP and IDOT. I know we're gonna get a lot of consultants that are gonna wanna do this, so we're gonna see what the workload is. We don't want it to be all consultants. But I know a lot of you depend upon consultants to do this, and you need them to know what they're doing, so then they give you a document. They've done at least some quality control on it, so it's pretty much correct, and you're not checking every I and dotting every I and crossing every T, but you're checking more the funding and schedule and that kind of stuff, so. Gary?
Yeah, Chad, thanks a lot. I wanted to just bring up something that we did in Burr Ridge years ago, working with IDOT, any of the communities that have bridges that straddle IDOT properties. And I'm surprised, frankly, IDOT didn't take this up more. When our bridge was getting reconstructed about 10 years ago, we were able to use local funds, federal funds, and we also took over the Cloverleaf. That is to say, the village took over the Cloverleaf maintenance from IDOT. And then in exchange for that, IDOT allowed us to brand our bridge. And I hope that those that pass through that area of Burr Ridge during the holiday season see how well we've lit it up. And I get a lot of great comments, and people ask me how that happened. Well, we did that with absolutely no money from the village, and it's being maintained through hotel motel tax and other, with no money from our residents. And I'm surprised that IDOT hasn't really approached some other communities. We took the maintenance off their hands. We have a very nicely branded bridge that we get lots of compliments on. And it's something that I think while you're doing all of this, if IDOT would consider that, I think some of the communities would be interested. The idea came to me because I was taking my daughter to college over 10 years ago at the University of Colorado at Boulder. And I was noticing going up I-25 how every community had branded their bridge. And I thought it was a pretty nice idea. And so it's something that I'm trying to advocate that IDOT consider, and maybe some of the villages that straddle these roads can do that.
There are some proposals out there, and again, that's more of something coordinated with the state side. I know that there are some corridors that IDOT's working on rehabbing a lot of bridges, and some local agencies have approached them as far as wanting to put some facades on for, sprucing it up or whatever you want to call it. And it just comes down to what they want to do and who's going to take some liability and stuff. Because I know some of them have proposed some things that the state's not happy because some of the appurtenances are like over the actual travel way. And they're not necessarily, it's a potential hazard if they were to break off or, that kind of stuff. So they do work with it. I do know they put some, like along the Elgin O'Hare extension, we did some enhancements for those communities as they put monuments, in some of the clear areas of the ramps and that kind of stuff too. But, if you ever have, when the state releases an MYP, if you see a bridge in your municipality that's going to be rehabbed or whatever, feel free to write a letter to the district that's saying, no, we'd like to partner with you on how this bridge is going to be, reconstructed or rehabbed and what it ultimately will look like.
Yeah, and we addressed those issues. We wanted to put something over the highway. They did not want to do that. We worked it out a different way.
Yeah.
But we were very satisfied with the product that we were able to build straddling County Line Road and I-55. And again, I get a lot of compliments on it. It's a great identifier for your community. So if any of you are in that situation where a bridge is getting redone and you're considering it, feel free to give our village a call because we worked it out really with very little cost, no cost to our residents, and we can give you some ideas.
Yeah, there are some spot areas out there. I know like when that tollway came through and did their reconstruction, I know like Schaumburg and like at Meacham Road, they put some of the more aesthetically pleasing lighting and railings and that kind of stuff on to make it look better. But again, that's more coordinating, early on. It's just, I know that there have been some where local agencies come in when the state's getting ready to put a project, on a letting in the next couple of months. And they're like, wait, can you consider doing some changes? And you start adding things and that kind of stuff. You're changing loads and all that kind of stuff. So you got to coordinate early on that.
Great. Any other questions? Jan? I think this is just a good example of what you get when you serve on the CMAP Council of Mayors. You get direct in the face with IDOT, and normally it's with this gentleman, but he's always very, very good. And we get to know probably more than we would know otherwise as to how IDOT's going to do something or why they want to do it. And we can talk about our individual projects with them. So there are some benefits to coming in here and going through this because it sets you in a position that a lot of other mayors don't get to do. So appreciate it.
I
Thanks.
never tried to intentionally mislead you.
Right. Good to have you back. Good to
Thank
see you.
Yep.
All right, next we are going to have the STP Selection Committee. Kama Dobbs is here to update us on the activities of that. Kama?
All right, good morning, everyone. The STP Project Selection Committee met last in November of 2023, and we're scheduled to meet next on April 11th. At the April meeting, staff is going to summarize areas of the project selection methodology that may be discussed by the committee for potential updates later this spring and summer. That's ahead of the next call for projects that'll open in mid-October sometime. Official date TBD at this point. As of this moment, I anticipate that the criteria that may be discussed this summer will include the jobs and household score, scoring of safety projects and transit yard or terminal projects, as well as the resilience planning factor that was introduced during the last cycle. Any changes that we make are expected to be relatively minor adjustments in this cycle. I think, we're going into our fourth cycle, and I think we're finally down to something solid that works for the region. So just expecting small adjustments this year. If you do have any suggestions for improvements to the shared fund methodology, I'd encourage you to discuss those with your planning liaison or with your representatives on the selection committee, which are Mayor Shelkey, Rockingham, and President Kukler. Beyond the activities of the selection committee, I just want to take my time at the mic here to remind everyone that there's a significant, about $182 million unobligated balance of STP funds in the region this federal fiscal year, which we refer to when we come out to your meetings as redistribution funding. This funding is available to all councils, to CDOT, and to shared fund projects. Councils can request the use of these funds for projects that are programmed in later years or programmed on a contingency list that are ready to go to obligate funds before September 30th of 2024. So we're we're getting tight in the year. I think pre-final plans are due for the September letting in April and for the November letting in June. So it's getting tight to get projects in. So I want to keep mentioning this. While it is necessary for a council to obligate 100% of their own funds before actually using the redistribution funds, councils can plan to use those funds now. So now is the time to be moving projects forward. Any project sponsors that think they may have a project that's not currently programmed in 2024 that could meet the deadline should contact their planning liaison as soon as possible to discuss any reprogramming actions to take advantage of this balance. I do believe that there have been conversations about this at all of your transportation and technical committees over the last couple of months, but I just want to keep this in front of everybody. It's a pretty large balance. So finally, I just want to thank all of you for your leadership within your councils and all of your staff for completing your calls for local STP projects and developing those draft programs. I know that there are several that are still out for public comment, but we are nearing the home stretch and we're looking forward to presenting the tip changes for those programs to CMAP's Transportation Committee in May and the MPO Policy Committee in June. So that was all I had in my report today, but I'm happy to take questions about STP.
If we have any questions for Kama, I can attest that she knows, generally, she's the one that knows a lot of answers to a lot of questions. If you don't want to talk to her here, you can call her on the phone and she does answer her phone here with great regularity. So
Absolutely.
she'll call you back or email you back or whatever. So she's the right person in the right place on that particular subject.
Absolutely. STP occupies about 80% of my time. So
Well, thanks for sharing us the fund balance. I think everybody sitting here can think of things in their mind that could maybe be applied to. So it's good to know that we're not sitting here saying, well, gee, we're 183 million short, we have to cut stuff. So it's from that perspective, I think you have to look at it as a good thing.
yeah, for sure. And I think we've got folks targeting to use about 98 million of that funding right now. So it's still a significant balance. We're looking at rolling over to next year. So we're going to keep having this conversation.
All right, well, keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go then to the Transportation Safety Program, and that's Vicki Barrett.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. My name is Victoria Barrett. I'm filling in for Lindsay Bailey today. Wanted to give you a brief update on the Transportation Safety Program here at CMAP, which we refer to as STAR, the Safe Travel for All Roadmap. The big news in the STAR program is that our regional safety action planning effort is underway. As you may remember, last year, we received almost $5 million from the federal government, the U.S. Department of Transportation, in the form of a Safe Streets and Roads for All planning grant. And we are now putting that into action. We have 6 county level safety plans that have kicked off. It is a massive effort. I think we have every qualified consultant in transportation safety working on the different plans. And the goals of these safety action plans, which are, as I mentioned, being run at the county level, are really to consider the entire transportation network within each county, so that every municipality who is motivated and has safety concerns has what they need to apply for implementation funding from the same program in future years. The plans will identify priority locations and types of locations where safety issues are happening. They will identify priority safety issues such as speeding or impaired driving based on crash histories and public engagement. And they will identify priority modes for transportation safety improvements, such as crosswalks for pedestrians and improved bicycle safety infrastructure. This will also include a very large-scale regional engagement effort. There will be events, there will be surveys, there will be newsletters happening. So please keep an eye out for possibilities to participate in our safety planning effort in the coming 18 to 24 months. And I just want to thank all of our county partners who have worked really hard to make these plans happen. They've helped us develop a work plan, they've helped us procure consultants, and they are just committed to improving traffic safety for the whole region. So in addition to that, I wanted to just mention that other safety action plans happening in the program are in Cicero, and we're about to start one in the Greater Ashburn neighborhood. We have 5 bicycle and pedestrian plans, which have a big safety focus included in them as well. And we're working closely with the next long-range transportation plan team and the vision team, which you'll hear about a little bit later today, on making sure that travel safety is integrated into all of our future work. That's my update for today. I'm happy to take any questions and
Any questions? Keep up the good work and we'll look forward to hearing from you again.
yes.
All right, next one is always an interesting conversation, and that's the legislative update. And it says that John Carpenter's preparing it, but we have an able
I'm gonna
replacement.
start. Laura Wilkinson, I'm gonna start. And John's here as well as Kasha and Ryan if we have any questions on some of the particular legislation. But I wanted to join you today as I joined our board and our MPO recently to talk about 3 pieces of legislation that CMAP has been pursuing this legislative session. So first, we have talked with the Council of Mayors about this before because we have refiled to get an appropriation for CMAP directly in order to do work that is broader than our scope in the transportation sphere. Because of our regional planning obligations, as the RPA Act insinuates, we should be doing work on housing and climate, economic development, and other areas, but we don't receive funding for that type of work. And so in addition to our transportation responsibilities, we have been seeking $5 million from a state appropriation in order to do those things that would let us really kind of handle our comprehensive planning organization work. So we have actually looked for legislation and we're pursuing legislation in that space. We've also sought a bill to make changes to CMAP's enabling statute, the Regional Planning Act. What this would do is actually modernize the statute. It would lay down a defunct wastewater committee that hasn't met for years because we've actually incorporated that work into our general work here at CMAP. We also had started with a bill that would allow some flexibility in our voting requirement that would allow us to be able to move things like contract approvals and grant agreements forward. And during our March board meeting, the board voted to approve amending the language to allow for decisions for things like contracts, excluding the contract regarding the employment of the executive director. Grants, purchase agreements, and meeting minutes would be allowed for a simple majority vote of the board instead of the 4/5 requirement. And then the 4/5 requirement would be for all other actions that the board takes. The last piece of legislation that we have been working with to make changes is the Illinois Municipal League is pursuing legislation that would permit public bodies subject to OMA to meet remotely in cases when the chief elected or appointed official deemed it to be unsafe. So this is essentially kind of cleaning up the legislation of what they did actually do during the COVID pandemic. What we wanted to pursue and are looking to pursue is that OMA also delineates that certain public bodies allow for remote participation, things like that have statewide jurisdiction or select public bodies that have a jurisdiction over 4,500 square miles. Well, CMAP's jurisdiction is covering about 4,071 square miles. And so what we are looking to pursue is to see if there is kind of to have a carve out that would allow us CMAP in order to have that same sort of leniency in how we would be able to have some of our public bodies meet. However, it would still be that you could have a public body in McHenry would be having the meeting at the same time. It would just be allowed for them to be remote. So we wanted to make sure that we wanted to change the function. Again, I don't think it's going to generally change a lot of what we do here at CMAP, but we want to make sure kind of we set that in stone and set a precedent for future use. We also provided information on a lot of other pieces of legislation that we're following that have to deal with safety, wastewater, greenhouse gases. And again, happy to answer any questions about those, but wanted to make sure you were aware of the 3 pieces of legislation that we're following right now or pursuing. I'll take any questions on those.
Have any questions from the legislative report? It's
Great,
odd
thank
we
you.
don't, because this is generally the hot potato in the room.
I know.
Maybe the,
I'll just comment as part of being on the CMAP board, pushing for the legislation to allow us more flexibility in our voting will be a big advantage for us because it'll increase our efficiency. Some people just can't make the meeting sometimes, and then things get delayed because of the 4/5. It's impractical at this point, and the carve-outs that we've suggested, I think, improve the integrity or keep the integrity of the process at 4/5, but others, simple contract approvals and things like that should be majority. And so that's actually a pretty important piece of legislation for our efficiency.
And Aaron did go to Springfield last week in order to pursue that, and it is moving forward on the Senate side right now. So we'll be excited to have that move forward.
Any other questions? Well, thank you. All right, moving to 4.5, local government network, Lily Brock.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lily Brack. I'm a planner with CMAP and the project manager for the local government network. We recently completed our 24th initiative through the local government network, where we encouraged communities to apply for the recent technical assistance call for projects. And as Amy mentioned earlier, we had a record-breaking amount of applications. We had 122. And I'm really excited to share that 60% of applicants reported that they found out about the call through the local government network. So that was really exciting for us to see. We also had a ton of questions and requests from liaisons to help with applications. We had a lot of communities reach out to their liaisons and request meetings with the Call for Projects team to talk about their project ideas. So that was great to see that engagement. And I think that this just demonstrates the value of the local government network as a tool to share resources with communities in our region. Our 25th initiative is coming up next week, so we'll be sharing or encouraging communities who have not yet attended any of CMAP's ADA trainings to register for the upcoming trainings, which are in April and May. And, really just encouraging them to take advantage of this helpful and free resource that's available to them. And lastly, the LGN team is in the process of developing an internal guidance document for liaisons to become better equipped to visit their communities in person. So we've actually had a lot of demand from liaisons who want to develop a stronger relationship with their communities and have those tools to do that. And so for people who are not planners like me and aren't always engaging with communities, we wanted to develop a resource which will include things like talking points, materials that they can bring, and other helpful resources to share with communities. So that concludes my update. I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you.
Any questions or comments? Well, thank you. I'm next told that Austin Edwards wants to provide an update on CMAP's long-range planning approach.
Good morning. How's everyone? Not fully caffeinated yet?
Yeah.
Well, hi, my name is Austin Edwards. I'm a senior policy analyst with CMAP. I've been with the agency for about 7 years now on the policy team. And a lot of the updates we've provided you this morning have to do with our activities to help local governments, achieve many of their objectives on a local basis. But we also want to provide you an update on what we're doing at the regional scale, because of course we are mandated to fill regional planning activities by the state legislature. So next slide. Well, we were missing a slide apparently. Well, I'll do it by voice. As you are well aware, we are charged with two main responsibilities. We are charged by the federal government to perform transportation planning on behalf of the metropolitan region. We have to maintain a minimum of a 20-year planning horizon. We have to involve implementers, FHWA, FTA. It guides all of the transportation investments that we make as a region. And there are a lot of technical requirements that go along with that, including some of the things that come before you. On the other hand, we are also charged, as Laura just mentioned, by the Regional Planning Act here in the state of Illinois to provide comprehensive planning for the entire region that it looks beyond just transportation, but looks to the overlaps that it has with housing, economic development, water supply, stormwater, really thinking about how these issues intersect here in the region. And that planning activity is supposed to guide the development of the physical development of the region and set a foundation for all planning that occurs throughout our many municipalities. So why do we invest in a regional plan? Well, it really goes to the heart of what planning is and what we think regional coordination entails. It anticipates big picture challenges, big picture opportunities that are on the horizon. It keeps pulling people's eyes back towards that horizon out of the sort of day-to-day process frustrations that we can all get pulled into. It's intended to generate consensus on big issues of shared importance, things related to investment or regulatory needs that you all need in your own communities. And it also adopts the region's policy on key issues. So we are able to sort of, come to a consensus about things that we don't necessarily see eye to eye on and set firmly on paper what the policy of the region is. And then finally, it creates policies that can then be used by sub-regional planners, by the PLs, by the planners in your own offices to adopt and extend on a local level. Next slide, please. Well, there's my slide on the two responsibilities that we have. We can keep going. So as you probably are all aware, if you've been part of CMAP's circle for any time, you know that we really emerged in 2005 when two former agencies were merged, the CATS, the Chicago Area Transportation Study, and NIPSI, the Northeastern Illinois Planning Commission. These are two long-standing, long-running agencies who are trying to fulfill these responsibilities here in the region. In 2005, those were brought together to recognize the comprehensive nature of planning, particularly around land use and transportation, and how these things should be done in concert. We've been fulfilling those requirements on a quadrennial basis, where we make every 4 years updates to a comprehensive regional plan. That began with GO-TO 2040 and a National Planning Award winning plan, the first of its kind here in the region in a very long time. Then subsequent updates in 2014. If you were involved with us in 2018, you will recall the mountain of work that went into adopting ONTO 2050. And then during the pandemic, a sort of slim technical update to ONTO 2050 as well. And so you begin to see a bit of a pattern here of how we've been trying to fulfill these responsibilities. Every 4 years, we will adopt some sort of update to the regional transportation plan. And every other cycle, we will sort of hang on to that, a lot of the policy work in other areas that we need to be thinking about: housing, the economy, the environment, and other issues. There are a couple of issues with this approach. First is that it pushes the horizon year out 10 years every 8 years. So if we were to stick with this cycle, we would be looking at 2060, and we keep getting sort of farther and farther out into the future, which means that we're less responsive to some of the more immediate demands that we need to be thinking about. And then also it creates sort of this team structure within the agency where we have all these implementation activities that we're really excited about, that we've made big commitments to, and every 4 years or so, we have to set that aside to sort of all rush to the team and help get these things off the board, off the ground. They are huge lifts, as you will remember if you were involved with 2050, or if you've been involved with some of our more recent activities, for example, the PART report last year. These things can take up all of the spare oxygen in the agency to sort of get them completed. On the other hand, we've seen real progress out of these plans, and we're really proud of the work that they've achieved. So if we can go to the next slide, please. On to 2050, as I said, we're really proud of the progress that has been made through the plan, the policy direction that it provides, but we're never ones to rest on our laurels. So there's time to think about what the next plan ought to look like. We're due to deliver something in 2026. And I think it's important that we take a moment to sort of reflect on what has worked well and what could be improved. Next slide, please. So if you were part of the 2050 development process, you'll recall that there was a lot of policy research, a lot of data research, a lot of public engagement that went into the plan. We're really proud of that lift as an agency. It helps us bring in the kind of input and stakeholder engagement that we need to be doing our work really effectively. And since then, we have made big commitments to some of the implementation activities that you heard about earlier around ADA compliance, traffic safety, climate action planning, and all of our ongoing, not usual programming responsibilities, which makes this kind of lift rather difficult to pull off every 4 to 8 years. Next slide. At the same time, we know that all of the elements of 2050, the policy recommendations, the plan principles, have helped us to shape the tone and the focus of public dialogue here in the region. And it has, the situation has changed pretty substantially since 2018. So there are areas where we need to continue to sort of push forward and refine our approach in really important ways and try to address not just some of the outcomes of the trends that we've been seeing, but also the root causes. Next slide, please. So we have come to the conclusion that we need to take a new approach to regional planning, that this sort of heavy lift every 8 years, and then we go back to our implementation activities, and we pull back together and do a big lift, and then we go back to implementation activities. But that sort of seesaw effect isn't necessarily serving us anymore. So instead, we need to be thinking about where we know that there's a need for more dedicated and responsive planning in particular issue areas. And at the same time, how we can be adapting to take better advantage of a funding environment that's very different from 2018. We've seen increased federal funding, although there's no guarantee that that will continue. And there's also a greater emphasis on regional coordination really across funding sources. So thinking about a new approach, next slide, please. We are not ones to think that we can't learn from our peers. So we looked across the country at some of our other MPOs in major cities and seen what they have been doing as well. Next slide, please. To start, the Met Council is the MPO in Minneapolis, St. Paul. They have for decades been successfully implementing a vision and subplans approach where the vision, which is currently known as Thrive MSP 2040, they are in the process of updating it towards 2050. This vision provides a long-term view of what the region's growth and development ought to look like. And then from that central vision, they then provide guidance down to 4 topical subplans focused on transportation, housing, regional parks, and water resources. Together, these collectively serve as the region's comprehensive plan. That vision continues to sort of set the policy foundation for each of these primary subplans. And there are even sort of special initiatives or one-off studies that look at even additional topics as well. And within that vision, they can sort of stress what are the values that are most important to the metropolitan area and put some extra emphasis on things around sort of the complexity of the issues they want to address, the need for importance. It gives them an opportunity to refine and target outreach to particular groups. So in their current cycle, they're taking a particular focus on young people and new immigrants to think about how they can bring in more of that sort of public engagement. Next slide, please. So PSRC, the Puget Sound Regional Council, is our peer sister agency in the Seattle region. They are currently operating under what they call Vision 2050. It provides a comprehensive vision for the region's growth and development. Based on this vision, PSRC also develops subplans focused on, again, transportation, economic development, and housing that are intended to translate the overarching vision into topical areas that are specific to particular strategies. And this also, as you'll notice, both on the Met Council and also here on PSRC, these little symbols that signify that these plans are allowed to evolve in their own time frame and take advantage of and be more responsive to situations, what progress has been made, new funding that's become available, changing regulatory needs. So they're not tied to that 4-year cycle as our comprehensive plan is. The vision also provides a new look at equity and health outcomes. That was a particular emphasis in the Seattle area. And it defines regional geographies that allows them to then think about how land use and transportation need to be coordinated over the long term. Next slide. Finally, looking at my home region in the Atlanta area, this is the 11 county Atlanta region's regional commission. They have what they call an overarching regional plan framework called One Great Region that focuses on a 3-fold vision, providing a world-class infrastructure, fostering healthy, livable communities, and building a competitive economy. And I won't dwell too long on it, but you can see sort of the array of different plans and studies that back up this sort of central vision. I think you're starting to see where we're going. Next slide, please. So we are proposing that CMAP strike out on a new approach to regional planning. Next slide. And just to sort of summarize what we've looked at so far, We've seen significant progress and policy direction provided by 2050. We continue to lean on that pretty heavily. It continues to have enduring value for us both as an agency and I believe as a region. But our funding environment has changed pretty substantially. We know there are areas that need more dedicated and responsive planning. You can see some of those issues over to the right. And there is an opportunity for us post-pandemic to reassert first principles that allow the region to go farther and faster on some of the critical issues that we want to see progress on. Next slide. So here's where we're trying to go. We know that there's a need for topical plans, more action-oriented plans in different arenas that CMAP wants to participate in. But we need one central vision that helps to unify those activities over the next 5 to 10 years. That regional vision should be a lighter lift than Onto 2050 was. It doesn't require all of the policy research, all of the data research to be updated at once, but it should provide a central vision for where the region wants to go, what's most important to our residents, what are the critical issues that we need to be addressing in the next 5 to 10 years. And then from that vision, we will continue to provide other kinds of elements that help to serve as part of the region's comprehensive plan. And there's a variety of shapes and formats that can take, as I said, hopefully in a more responsive manner than one snapshot in time, which is provided by our current approach. Next slide, please. There are a range of benefits that we see in this based on our conversations with peer MPOs around the country. One of those is the flexibility and the focus that it provides us to be, as I've said throughout, more responsive to particular issue areas, because we'll be no longer tied to that 4-year update, which is currently required by federal transportation regulations. It also allows us to look at more tailored solutions, because we know that, say if we want to think about workforce housing, there are unique approaches and solutions that need to be addressed in that area with really dedicated public engagement and work with our stakeholders and subject matter experts, where we don't necessarily have the time to address those in the depth that we want to when we're trying to have that conversation, as well as a conversation about climate action plan, as well as a conversation about traffic safety, as well as the conversation about transportation. At the same time, we don't want to create new silos around our planning efforts. There's a reason that CATS and NIPSI were merged back in the early 2000s. But we think that there's a way for us to break down some of those silos and actually have more interdisciplinary teams dedicated to issues like housing or the environment, because they're not off running their own engagement efforts around a comprehensive plan. Our current approach really requires an all hands on deck staffing plan, and that's just not very sustainable for us over the long term. It also allows us to have more enhanced public engagement and outreach. It allows us to go back to the public and say, what really matters to you? What are your worries? What are your concerns? We want to make sure that the general public has access to all of our research, all of our policy recommendations, but sometimes we need to lean forward and think, well, what's, not just a Hearts and Mind campaign, but what really is speaking to your heart? What are you really concerned about when you think about your children or your grandchildren? We get that high level engagement back from the public and make sure that we have meaningful and equitable participation across the region. It also allows us to go into deeper analysis where we know that there's a need for more thorough understanding in particular arenas, let's say in water supply, where we need to have a more dedicated effort, a more dedicated study, more dedicated engagement with subject matter experts. And finally, it allows us to sort of align on high level regional goals. Sometimes we can get sort of stuck in the process level disagreements around, particular funding programs or particular approaches, when what we really need to is come to an agreement on, in principle, we believe that this is an issue that we need to address. We can find agreement on the what's and the whys and sort of think about how we can get a more dedicated process to come to agreement on the hows that really matter. And then, monitor and implement those activities over time while making sort of data-informed adjustments. Next slide. So what is next? Well, the next long-range regional transportation plan is due in October of 2026. We are hoping to adopt the regional vision at that same time. That sounds like it's a long time off, but in A region as large and complex as ours, trying to run a regional planning effort is no small feat. So 2.5 years is a pretty tight time frame to turn it around on. So we will be coordinating with our regional, local, and federal partners and beginning the process to get both of these off the ground shortly. Next slide. The regional vision will have 3 major phases to the work. The board, the MPO, all of our committees, you will be involved in this process. We are trying to cast as wide a net as we can for both public and stakeholder engagement. This is going to be, I think, a very interesting, and if you're a sort of a nerd about comprehensive regional planning, as we all are here at CMAP, it's going to be a lot of fun as well. Those 3 phases that I mentioned are foresight, values, and vision. And they answer some of the questions that you would sort of naturally ask yourself as you're thinking about where we need to be going through 2060. So foresight will focus on questions like, where are we today? Where are we currently headed? Where could we end up if some trends continue into the future? Values is asking more questions about, where do we want to go? You know, who is traveling with us? What really matters when we think about the many different kinds of futures that could be ahead of us? And then finally, in the vision cycle, we're asking questions around, how do we get there? How do we build our capacity to achieve the vision, the future that we envision? And there's going to be some sort of regional policy, regional strategies included in that, but it's also giving forward guidance to CMAP staff about what kinds of planning activities we expect over the next 5 to 10 years. Next slide. Yes. So I will also be sort of mentioning just in passing that the regional transportation plan will be operating in parallel. They are also getting their staff pulled together and those projects kicked off the ground. I know that they will be coming back to you in a few months to sort of talk to you more about what will be involved in the regional transportation plan. We will be coordinating behind the scenes between those 2 efforts. But with that, I'm happy to either take questions, or we also have discussion questions for you where we'd love your feedback on this new approach.
Anybody have any questions? Gary?
So, looks like you put lots of work into this, foresight, values, vision, and how is this going to better position you, CMAP, to get the money to get this done? The frustration in these endeavors, I'm sure, is that you put a lot of your skill, your training, your experience into all of this. You can see through the vision, you put forth the values and the foresight, and we all want to do that, and we all want to be effective. But we all know that it's all dependent on money, and we're in a region that maybe is not the priority it once was because of shifting populations and economics. So my challenged question to you is, with all of this great work, how is this going to better position us to make sure we can get some of the funding to get
Right.
some of this done?
Well, one is, there are multiple reasons. I think one is at staff level, the ability to get a very large comprehensive plan off the ground every 8 years onto 2050 is 485 pages, not including all of the appendices. That's really an all hands on deck approach for staffing, which means that we have to put other implementation activities on hold in order to get that done. So a lot of the work that we're currently doing around ADA compliance, safety, climate action plans, all of which are oriented around how do we get the planning in place to go after particularly federal funding at the moment or state funding down the road, those would have to be paused while we sort of complete this regional planning responsibilities. I don't think that's the approach that any of us want to take, where, you know, we have sort of this seesaw effect of where staff is putting its emphasis. The other piece I'll say is that our current approach is sort of dictated by the 4-year updates to the regional transportation requirements. And of course, the vast majority of the money that we help to program is transportation dollars. However, there are new funding sources. Again, there's no guarantee that the federal government will continue to fund things at their current levels, but there are new funding sources out there for housing, for economic development, for the environment, for climate action planning. And those don't necessarily match up with that same planning cycle. So what we would like is to be able to sort of break those pieces up, have more dedicated efforts that are responsive to, like, okay, well, we know that state regulations are changing around housing. We know that there's new money available for MPOs to work on housing coordination, and we anticipate that there's going to be new federal funding, say, for housing issues. We need to make sure that we're able to sort of go after those funds without necessarily being tied to the 4-year updates. It does sort of raise the bar for both staff and for all of our governing boards to be really smart and intentional about how we're going after these activities, but we don't want to then lose sight of the need for comprehensive planning and how these issues speak to one another. So that's the goal of the vision, is to help to unify those activities over the next 5 to 10 years by laying down those, what are these ground rules? What are the first principles that we can all agree on? Great, now let's go after some of those more responsive efforts.
One follow-up comment on that. To me, you would try to look and see where the money might come from in order to achieve this or this or this. Because if you can actually get some wins from all of the great work that you're doing, that tends to bring along some other wins. And I don't want you to think small, think big. It's the motto around Chicago, I
Right,
suppose.
exactly.
But the thinking small in terms of here's where there might be a source of money, and here's where we can get a win. And when we get a win, then we get attention. And if you can get another win, you get more attention. And if you can produce government, the people that make the decisions, they want others to do the work for them, and they want to look good for that, okay? We know that's true, and we're all mayors, okay? And that's I think the big challenge to you is how can we get it done? And I think all these are great plans. They make sense. We'll all nod our heads up and down, but we'd like wins. And so that's my challenge is I don't know where those wins are, but as someone who asks others to make us look good, I think that's really your biggest challenge is where do we get the funding to get some of this done? Because we'll never get the funding to get it all done. Sorry to get on my bandwagon.
No, that's a helpful note, and we appreciate the accountability.
Picking up on what Mayor Grasso just said, I will tell you that being the chairman of this group, I get a number of phone calls relative to what we're doing in here. And so right at the moment, I guess I would use the word lobbied. I am being lobbied very heavily by people from the gas industry about the replacement of so many of these gas lines. And so now we've gone on TV with commercials. And now the governor's doing something that he's supposedly stopped some gas in. I don't know. I gotta know more about that. But that's just one. Then we get into the electric. And that becomes a big thing about, do we really have enough power in the region to supply ourselves when we turn all these electric cars loose and we do all the other stuff that we heat the house with electricity and everything, all this other. So the question is, and then we had a prohibition on new nuclear reactors in Illinois. And I got involved in that. I'm friends with State Senator Rezin out of Morris, and she's kind of leading a movement to get that overturned. And the governor vetoed the first time it was done. Now there's been some adjustment to the language, and that may be happening. But 10 years from now, are we going to have, as a region, with a lot of people plugging their cars in every night in the garage, are we going to have enough electricity to handle all this? And then, of course, the other big one is water. And we have Lake Michigan wanting to sell water to a lot of folks. And out in my area, Central Kane County, we're sitting on top of the Newark Aquifer out there. So we got all the in-ground water we need. We don't need Lake Michigan. And we had kind of a couple of, I'll not call them nasty, but disagreeing meetings with some of the folks that wanted to come in and sell us Lake Michigan water after we spent multi-millions of dollars to put pipe in the ground to get it out 35 miles. So, you are in a very challenging position, and I'm really, quite honestly, I'm very pleased that CMAP is taking this on to kind of analyze all these issues, because this is big stuff. And in the next 10 to 15 years, whether you're the mayor or the county board chairman or whatever, these are going to be in your face big time. And I think there probably are answers, but a lot of those answers haven't come onto the table yet.
Absolutely. You're picking up on several of the trends that we know we're going to need to be thinking about: electric vehicles, climate migration, people working from home more. There's a lot of shifting dynamics that we need to be sort of pulling into our planning activities that weren't even sort of on the radar in 2018 in the same way. And at the same time, a lot of our partners are thinking about these issues in ways that they weren't 5 or 6 years ago. So it is an exciting moment, but there are a lot of issues to try to think about. That's true.
And as a politician sitting here, I will tell you, there's one thing common to all these. They're all about the money behind it that's needed to put them all into place. And most of us, certainly I'm at a point in my property taxes and everything else that people are saying, no more, we don't want to raise anything more. So, that's, and then you say, well, let's go to the state or federal government. Well, I don't even want to get into that at the moment, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening here. And I'm very proud of CMAP because I was part of the group that just took apart the last group and put it back together. I was on that committee. I've been here so darn long. And we combined NIPSI and CATS together, and it was a marvelous futuristic decision. And I think it is your role is showing it's playing a very pivotal, valuable role for the region to have in the future. But that's what this group's supposed to be all about, is knowing where the region can go and cooperatively sharing ideas. And that's what we're trying to do here. Anybody else want to jump in on this conversation? Well, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right, other business. Do we have any other business? I don't want to be the only one that's, besides Mayor Grasso, that's sitting here talking today. I just want to share an experience we had the last time I was in here. If you're the chairman of this group, you sit on the CMAP Policy Committee, and that's the bigger group. I guess that's where a lot of the decisions are made that have some impact. And so under other business at that one, I brought up the idea or the news that in Batavia, where I'm at, I now have 6 senior living communities in my town. And some of them are quite large. And I have that the number changes literally every day, but I think I have around 1,800 senior citizens in Batavia. And what we are finding out with those 1,800 senior citizens are, we've become a target for attack on these people. And specifically, it's on the technology world, as many of them will tell me, well, Jeff, I graduated from high school before 1970, and I never saw no computer or any technology in any school classroom I was ever in. So I'm lost in this whole thing. So then these shysters, or whatever you want to call them, target these people. And they're calling them up and they're getting them on, get them on the phone. They know how to answer their phone mostly. And they come up stuff like, we're from the IRS and we've just audited your last year tax return and you were $1,300 or $313 under what you should have paid. So just give me your credit card number and we'll charge that, and then you'll be all square with the IRS. Well, this is no more the IRS than the man in the moon. And then another one is, we're from Amazon and we've got this big package here, but it says your credit card's paying for it, but it's being delivered to Albany, New York. Do you know anything about this? Well, no, it's not. Well, give me your credit card number so I can make sure that it's the right credit card number. And they do. Well, then right away they're onto the credit card. They're generally within a day they're calling the police. I now have 2 police officers in Batavia that don't do nothing else other than deal with crime on the computer. And it's a real bad thing. So my police chief and I have just started a new community program that we're going to all 6 of our senior living communities. And we're putting out a program about, hey, folks, this is what they're doing to you and whatever have you. And then we've gotten the Batavia High School Technology Department, and we're meeting about this on Thursday. They've got 2 teams of kids that are going to volunteer, and on like 1 or 2 days a week, 2 or 3 of these kids are going to go to each one of the senior living communities. They're going to park themselves in there and invite the senior citizens to bring in their technology questions, whether it's on their iPhone or their computer or some phone call they got. and they're gonna be there to communicate with them and say, oh, this doesn't sound right, you know. I will tell you, I'm getting fabulous positive response about this whole idea. And once I get it more worked out, I will be willing certainly to share it with CMAP group and maybe have our folks come in here and put on a little program for you about how it's being done, because I mean, I am amazed at the amount of crime that's being attached onto my senior, and you know, we're in a pretty low crime town, but boy, we are getting knocked on the head with the crime on the computer and the technology. It's just all over the place. And so then I was told by one that she got a call Monday from the Netherlands. And it was somebody she was having a hard time understanding, and it was a woman representing that she was a surveyor from Amazon, and that they had found out that this woman was being charged on her credit card for a $1,214 charge for a package that was being shipped to Springfield, Ohio, not Batavia, Illinois. And did she know anything about it? Well, she gets all excited, and rightfully so. But I mean, it's that type of things that are going on, and it's not really Amazon at the first phone call. It's somebody trying to get your information away from you, your credit card number, your social security, or whatever. And I think as a state and a nation, we're probably going to have to do a new thing. When I was talking the other day, the tollway was sitting there at the policy committee. And I said that one of the problems we are finding is that these folks are having their credit cards stolen and they don't know it. And then they get fined it out. So then they immediately have to change their credit card number, but they don't know that if they want to ride on the tollway, they got to update that credit card number. And that's become a big problem for many of them. So one of the things that we're going to put into this program is how to get yourself transferred on paying the tollway. Because one woman who has family in, I believe, down in the south suburbs, maybe in Worth, and she commutes like 5 times a week from Batavia down to Worth to be with her grandchildren. She has all these tolls, and suddenly she found out that her credit card was stolen, so she changed that. But now she just found out that she has $280 in toll bills from the tollway that they've taken her license plate every time she thought she was paying, but her credit card was denying it because it was stolen. So there's all this complication to all this stuff that's just unbelievable. So,
And it's not just senior citizens, it's
Right.
across the board. And so, although I am a senior citizen now over 65, and so we get phone calls all the time
Me too.
from
Yep.
all kinds of people that are trying to steal your identity. So it's something that we need to be very vigilant and mindful
I
of.
think there has to be a big public campaign about this identity theft thing that's going on here.
Absolutely.
So I just thought all of you are all in the same position I am, so you should all know about it, and that's. All right, what the rest of this tells me, that concludes our information items. Do we have any other business?
Comment?
Sure.
It's nice that Dad and I are represented today, and I know he's coming to our COG meeting tomorrow, and it's so good when IDOT is represented here and at the COGs, because for a while, it was tough to get the representation and get the questions answered.
Well, thank you. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay.
All right, just a reminder to the committee, we need you and your presence here during the meetings. Hearing none, we will move to public comment. Do we have anybody waiting to make a public comment? Nobody today, okay. Is there anybody in the room who wishes to address the committee? All right, moving on then to virtual attendees. Jared, are there any requests in the chat box or any hands raised? Okay. Seeing or hearing no other comment, our next meeting will be August 13th, 2024. The meeting will be in person and held here in this office. And so please put it on your calendar to plan to attend. And a reminder, if you did not sign in before we started, please be sure to sign in before you leave. There being no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Good job.